Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Thursday, May 9th. Derek and Riper here with Eno Saris on this episode. We dig into some fantasy baseball news you should know, including the promotion of Paul Skenes, which is coming this weekend on our third, maybe our fourth attempt. We actually got the date correct. So it is finally happening.
Eventually we'll be right.
Let's guess enough times. Eventually we'll have to be right. It's just the simple way it's going to work. We'll talk about expectations for Skenes, other big news items. We've got some players coming off the IL. We'll get to our weekend waiver preview and our latest installment of Project Prospect as well. As we mentioned at the top of our episode, we've got a Discord. Jumped on in there. The link is in the show description. Let's start with Paul Skenes, the big story of the week, right? We've talked about him a lot over the last few weeks, expecting this day to come. The debut is Saturday. It's against the Cubs. It is at home. All I'm seeing around Twitter is chatter indicating that this is the most highly anticipated pitching debut since Steven Strasburg, which I don't really have any pushback on. I think in terms of hype, in terms of the dominance Skenes has shown in his brief time in the minor leagues, that's a fair sort of assessment. And the follow-ups to that have all been, how high is too high to rank him now that he's joining the big league ranks? Is he a top 10, top 15, top 20, top 25? Where do you think he fits? If you were re-ranking pitchers today, even before seeing the first Paul Skenes major league start, where would he go? And a lot of second chance drafts are kicking off here. So this is a real question people are trying to solve. I think in many leagues, Skenes is already rostered. In shallow leagues, he's going to be picked up anywhere where he's not already rostered. But what are we getting right out of the box? This is where I think Stuff Plus really helps us compare apples to apples a lot better than we would have in the years when Strasburg came up. We didn't have models like that.
Yeah, I mean, he has comparable, like second best to Stuff Plus in the in AAA, and he combined it with above average locations in a way that almost nobody else, actually in a way that nobody else in the top 10 in Stuff Plus did. And so he seems polished. He has a large mix. He's even added pitches this year. He seems really ready to go. When I was ranking, I found that we had a 3.48 ERA projection for him based off of his minor league Stuff Plus numbers. And that puts him in the upper echelon already. I mean, we have a 3.47 for Tariq Skubal. We have a 3.43 for Freddie Peralta. So that suggests that you could put him in the top 10 if you really wanted to right away. I had him at 64 because despite all of our guesses as to when he would start, I didn't know when he would start and how many innings I could give him. And I gave him 95 innings for the season, which at the beginning of the season seems terrible. At this point in the season, it's still 95, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes up against all the other people who've pitched already, and so their numbers are smaller in terms of rest of season innings pitched. He's become more comparable to other people, and so you could move him up if you believe in 95, 100 innings out of him. 28% projected K rate is really, really good. And so you could push him all the way to maybe 15, where I have Chris Sale and Dylan Cease with 3.6 ERA projections, 28% strikeout rate projections, more innings than I have for Skenes. And then you have to bake in some of the risk that he's not as good as Dylan Cease and Chris Sale, So I don't know that I would push him past that, but behind him, if you do push him to 15, would be people like Joe Ryan, Kevin Gossman, Zach Gallen, Zach Eflin. Can you do that? Can you push him past that?
I don't know if I could go much lower than that. If I trust the expectations are fair. I mean, the changes to the pitch mix are real. Keith Law wrote about that for The Athletic. He's not just four-seam slider. He's got the splinker that's been working really well at AAA. So
that's the new pitch. Yeah,
that's going to be a problem for everyone because we've seen guys with great four-seam slider combos dominate with those two pitches. You give him more weapons to work with and the ability to locate. big things could certainly happen.
I think it's
right
easier
away.
to put him against the guys that I have in the mid-20s, which are like Yusei Kikuchi, Framber Valdez, Blake Snell, Aaron Nola, Bobby Miller, Justin Steele. A lot of injury concern there. I think it's easier to maybe put him ahead of Shota Imanaga and Joe Ryan just because they've had home run issues in the past. So, I think he would slot in at sort of 18, 17, 16 for me. I guess that's a fail on me to have him all the way down at 64, but you just you don't know. Like they could have played this game of he's not ready for a couple more weeks. And I think even, putting him at 18 might be a little bit pushing it. I mean, there's a lot of people who come to the major leagues who are supposed to be amazing and have adjustment issues. Just look at Grayson Rodriguez last year, whose stuff plus was impeccable. And when he came up to the big leagues, got punched in the mouth and had to sort of figure some stuff out before he was who he is now, basically.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, in the range of outcomes, even for someone who's really, really good, it's not necessarily flipping the switch and being Steven Strasburg right away. In Strasburg's debut season back in 2010, 2.91 ERA, 107 WHIP, 92 Ks in 68 innings. That was
I had my very first meetup ever at a bar in New York City to see Strasburg's debut and Giancarlo Stanton's debut. I think they were on the same day. Maybe one of them was like the second day or something. It was close enough where it was like the first time we'd seen them. And Strasburg dominated, and I think Stanton hit like a laser, like some sort of. I think it was like one of those things where we were rewarded for our anticipation.
They did debut on the same day. That was June 8th, 2010. So yeah, that's a day I remember because I scored it. I've talked about this on the show before. I scored Strasburg's game. I was watching it on my laptop on MLB TV because I didn't have MLB TV on my TV back then. We didn't have Chromecast and smart TVs back then. So I was huddled over a laptop on my dining room table with a score pad. Like, I want to score this game in case it's amazing. And it was a fantastic debut. So nice. I didn't even really see the Stanton debut because I only had one screen going and it was locked.
Yeah, we went to a bar that had good beer and like 5 TVs up. It was in Chelsea. I don't even remember the name of the bar, but there was a lot of cool people there. I mean, Jesse Spector was there, and I remember it was a fun time. And then we had Five Guys was downstairs, and we had Five Guys for dinner after that. It was good.
Yeah,
it was a good day.
It was a good day. Yeah. What's your plan for the Skenes debut?
Be at Little League watching Skenes pitch on my phone.
How many other parents are going to be huddled around you watching Paul Skenes on the phone instead of watching their own kid?
I don't know.
You can do both.
But there's an interesting thing there. The link between being into Little League and playing Little League and knowing about the major leagues is not as strong as you might think.
No.
There's definitely some kids who just play Little League and have no idea about who plays in the major leagues and anything about Major League Baseball.
Part of being a kid, right? If you're a kid, sometimes you do other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we're going to see a really nice outing from Skenes this weekend. I don't know what my plan actually is yet. I'm going to try and watch it live. I'm sure I'll be interrupted. I'll have to rewatch it later. It's the way life is right now. But I'm with you on that top 20 range being kind of appropriate for Skenes as far as our expectations out of the box. Even if he's less than that, he's going to be in lineups. He's going to be very good, I think, for the bulk of the time that he's up going forward. Let's move on to a few other news items. Christian Encarnacion-Strand was placed on the IL on Wednesday with a fracture in his wrist. Turns out he was hit by a pitch in late April. I think it was the 27th. And there's a right ulnar styloid fracture that will keep him down for 4 to 6 weeks.
So he's been playing in pain.
Been playing in pain for a couple of weeks. Hasn't looked like the same player he was last season. Was already in a little bit of a slump to begin the year, but I did look at the hard hit chart yesterday, and there's a noticeable drop from the time the injury happened. So the quality of the contact went down after the injury. Ks are about the same as last year, still 28.5% K rate. Encarnacion-Strand's been walking less than he did last year, and he didn't walk a lot. 5.8% last year was a pretty low walk rate for a slugger. He was down to 3.3% so far this year. I got a nice comment from someone in the updated rankings, wondering how I could possibly put CES ahead of Nolan Arenado. And I mean, now that he's hurt, obviously that would flip, because 4 to 6 weeks is enough to probably drop Christian Encarnacion-Strand in plenty of redraft leagues. It's really hard to nurse a 10th round pick through an injury that long, especially when the struggles were there pre-injury. I think there's a bigger question in play here, though. When you look at a player like Encarnacion-Strand, who does hit the ball hard, or at least did when he debuted, gets to that power right away, and has great results coming through the minors, but doesn't necessarily have the characteristics that are what you look for in a prospect, where do you go as far as your expectations? Like, do you trust the results, or do you say, as good as these results are, there's still a lot of ways it can go wrong, in the sense that he has a questionable hit tool and isn't necessarily a good defender. And once things get more crowded again in Cincinnati, the projected playing time risk that was there early in the winter could actually come back, because he didn't do enough pre-injury to begin the season to take advantage of the opportunity of being an everyday guy.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out that the playing time risk in Cincinnati was not about Ellie De La Cruz. It was not. It was about all the other people around him, because he's the one who can play shortstop. And that's something we talk about a lot on the show, is just the shortstop plays. And the first baseman is at risk. And that, I think that's what we've seen with Christian. One thing that I think we've seen that we have not seen from Nolan Arenado is the thing that is most tightly correlated with max EV is bat speed. So, or the thing that bat speed is most tightly correlated with is max EV in terms of outcomes, right? And I think that makes sense, because bat speed describes your raw power output, and then it's the finer things of how often you square it up and what your swing decisions are that mean game power, what your path is, right? Are you hitting into the ground or not? You know, these are the things that can keep you from using, like, from making the most of your raw bat speed of your max EV. He did not have the ground ball problem. The swing decision is there. There, you know, he chases a lot. He never really walked a lot. But I could see, you know who I kind of see when I'm looking at this? Chris Davis with a C. So I do think what's going to happen is the bat speed, once he gets healthy, the bat speed is going to be there, and he's going to show us that he can really punish the ball. What happens when you can really punish the ball? Pitchers don't pitch you as close to the center of the zone. That's something we've seen from baseball perspective. They did a cool piece on, I think it was Rob Arthur did a cool piece on projecting breakouts by watching pitchers pitch them further from the zone because they're more afraid of them, you know? And from my piece yesterday about how, like, there's this weird chicken and egg thing with, like, players play better if they see worse pitches, but players who are better see worse pitches. You know, like, just imagine pitching to Aaron Judge. What are you going to do? You're not going to throw him stuff down the middle.
Wow. And that was the Vlad Jr. conversation when he came up, is that he was being pitched like a seasoned big leaguer.
Exactly.
Teams were pitching away from him, around him, in ways that you didn't ordinarily see for a rookie breaking into the league. Like, the level of respect he was getting in the scouting report and in the approach was off the charts high.
And I think, you know, the reason that I bring up Chris Davis is that it didn't click for him right away. It took him a little bit of time. You know, he had some success early in 2008 in his rookie season. He had 126 WRC plus, and then he didn't get above 100 again with Texas. And remember, they traded him to Baltimore, and then he kind of took off in his second chance. And there's a lot of similarities with Chris Davis, because Chris Davis's max EV that we have on file, the best one from the middle of his career, was 113. Well, what's Encarnacion-Strand's? It's like 114, 113. Chris Davis's strikeout rate was 30%. You know, CES's is 28. Chris Davis's walk rate in his first couple of tries at the big leagues was 5%, 6%, 5%, you know? So I do think that we are going to get some monster seasons from Christian Encarnacion-Strand. I just don't know when. It's like one of those, things where it's not a very good approach, and he's going to have to get to some power, and then he's going to hit some mammoth home runs, and then they're going to be more careful with him, and he's going to get walks that way, I think.
I know health was a factor in 2014 for Chris Davis. Again, Chris Davis with a C. But if you kind of look at the 4-year peak for him, those first 4 years in Baltimore,
those are amazing years.
Count 2016 too. I mean, that's a lot of power, a lot of run production, even though it came at times with low averages. 3 of those 5 seasons, he hit 262 or better. Right. Yeah. So the benefit of hitting the ball really, really hard is you can run a crazy high BABIP. And it's also the function of hitting a lot of home runs. Like your average ticks up. Sometimes you do that too.
And it's the old Baltimore, which is more like the current Cincinnati. So I if you're in a keeper league, it's not, and if you're rebuilding, it's not a bad time to try and get him. If it's if you're in a redraft league, I think you just got to drop him.
Drop him and be excited about maybe picking him up as a power source once we flip the calendar to June and he gets back from that injury, because the crowd's coming more in late June and beyond. Noelvi Marte's suspension ends in the final week of June. Forget the exact day. I think it's like June 25th, sometime around then. Matt McClain has another visit with doctors to determine what his outcome is for this season. Maybe he's back in the second half. If you get both of those guys back, that adds some pressure around the infield because of the mixing and matching they can do. But there may be, if he hits the shorter end of that recovery window, there may be another 3 weeks or so for Encarnacion-Strand to try and put the pieces back together before things start to get more crowded in Cincinnati. They need it. I mean, their lineup overall has been surprisingly light in production. Mike Ford's on the team now as a result of the IL move.
And deep leaguers,
Santiago Espinal plays a lot more now.
Deep leaguers should consider him. Santiago Espinal does not have power upside, and I think deep leaguers should take a look at Mike Ford. Watch, especially if you have like a Sunday, free agency period. You now get 2 or 3 days to watch the playing time, because they're just by projections, like Zip says he can be 17% better than league average.
He's got some nice projections for a guy that was just available in May.
Yeah, I mean he's 31. It's a little bit old, so maybe you can't really believe in those projections, but the worst projections for league average. So, if you're like in a NL only league, you might get a free, 230 average and 10 homers, out of this guy. And that might be valuable for you. Could be, if you had CES in an NL only league, this could be the best option for you on the wire.
Here's a type of would you rather that we don't usually do, but you mentioned, rebuilding, thinking about multi-year leagues. Would you rather target Christian Encarnacion-Strand or Spencer Torkelson as a buy low, longer term option at first base?
I think Torkelson. I will have to say it's for reasons that I may not say yet. Just know that Baseball Savant is coming out with some cool new stats on Monday, and Torkelson doesn't look that bad in them.
Yeah, you can get the everlasting gobstopper machine approach going on right now. But it is funny when you look at them from just a raw numbers perspective. We talked about Torkelson during his time in the upper levels of the Tigers system, not putting up numbers that jumped off the page, even though the power was there. Things looked pretty good, right? Like 25 homers in 90 games between AA and AAA in 2021. He played at high A earlier in that season, but with slash lines that were just like, kind of a low average, good OBP masher. And he walks more than CES. He strikes out a bit less, but he's had this really weird fluctuation in performance, whereas CES, almost everywhere he played, put up just gaudy numbers at the plate, and totally different in terms of pedigree.
Torkelson was league average in his last stop in AAA.
Really bizarre.
Yeah,
for a 1-1 guy. So I don't know. I thought that was a interesting one to throw out there, but I do think Torkelson is safer, even though there's a more amplitude, more variance.
Yeah.
If you try to put the waves on where things could go.
Worse home park, worse floor because of worse home park, but better bat to ball, better swing decisions. And I don't know if Torkelson's hurt or whatever, but in 2 out of the 3 seasons so far, comparable raw power.
Yeah. interesting to keep an eye on that. I think the Monday episode might focus on some of the new toys at StatCast if you're wondering where we're headed to begin next week. Some more news that you may want to know. Christian Yelich came back from the IL, which is good news for the Brewers. The corresponding move was not great news for a lot of fantasy managers. Tyler Black gets optioned to AAA. Yeah, it's in that range of
wasted.
It's in the dumb range of outcomes that I think we did mention last week as part of the Thursday episode, and that even though Tyler Black was hitting in the heart of the order for the 6 games that he started as a Brewer, there was the Nathaniel Lowe example in Tampa Bay that I pointed to as the time that I learned this could happen, where I thought at that point, several years ago, I thought if a player comes up and is in a prominent spot in the lineup and they don't fall on their face, and we can have that conversation separate, that probably means the team really likes the player. And it just doesn't mean anything. It just means they like him in that spot at that time with the other alternatives. The questions around Tyler Black, I mean, what can you possibly have learned in 7 games about any hitter? This is the problem that every team faces right now. Yeah, the K rate jumped 34.8%. He's never struck out during a long stop more than 20% of the time in the minors. He had a shortstop.
7.5% swinging strike rate does not suggest a 35% strikeout rate.
No, Tyler Black was at least 30% better than league average everywhere he's played since high A. I know there are defensive limitations. That was brought up last week too. I just think when you look at something like what Ken Rosenthal wrote about this morning at The Athletic, and you see the lack of quality pitching at AAA quantified by Stuff Plus, you say, okay, he's clearly figured out AAA. Even though it's been 64 games between last season and this season, Tyler Black's not going to get better against big league pitching by going back down and seeing AAA pitching. So each roster's different. Each team situation is different, as we often say. But what I really can't figure out is that even if you want to play Tyler Black less with Yelich back and being able to move other guys around, why do you want to play Jake Bauers instead when Jake Bauers has a longer track record going back to last season with the Yankees where he is striking out 35+% of the time? I know he's a great defender.
I think this is the dumb answer here.
Options again?
Yeah, you lose Jake Bauers. A slightly smarter answer might be that he still has decent bat speed. Bauers does.
Right. But if you don't make contact,
and Black doesn't.
Yeah. Like so the cost of their respective approaches is reflected in their strikeout rates. So I want you to just everyone, unless you're driving a car, just close your eyes and imagine a scenario in which games that matter are being played for the Brewers in August.
Which would you rather have?
The game's on the line, and let's say you're down 1, there's 2 outs, and there's a runner on second base, and the game really matters.
Bauers could win you the game. Black has a higher chance of tying the game.
Yeah, like that's one way to look at it, but I don't think the possibility of the home run in that case, given the likelihood of a strikeout, I don't think the trade-off is quite right in that case. I think by that time they might make a different decision. But then if you dinked around, if to save Jake Bauers, you had to send Black down to AAA where he can't adjust to big league pitching, he's just there, he's just waiting. If he's less prepared for that situation later that you need, aren't you messing up instead of using him kind of as a 3 times per week sort of player in the short term?
I guess, like one thing that's interesting is that Turang, who does not have Bryce Turang, who does not have amazing bat speed, but does have a nice short, quick swing, has benefited from last year. Right?
Yep.
He got 448 plate appearances with a 60 WRC plus, but the defense is a bit of a component here. Why did you keep Turang in the big leagues for that long? Because he was competent with the glove.
He's elite defensively. He's a shortstop playing second base, and he's a legitimate good shortstop. So You got
so but that has afforded him. So I mean, you could do a smaller version of this. And since we're talking about Jake Bauers, the glove is not as important because you're talking about your first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you have, you even have DH open if you want to put Rhett at first. So, yeah, I would say that if you did, and what's funny is I just found the place where I did pay $50 for him. I didn't even start him.
Yeah, you didn't start him. You probably have to cut him. It's just money out the window for now.
I may hold him for a week or two because my team is in first. I have another option on the bench for depth. We'll see. If I hit injuries, like, he'll be the first to go, right? But right now my team can handle it. And if I just hold him for a couple of weeks, maybe at some point the team is going to make a different decision about Jake Bauers. I don't know what they're waiting on. In terms of barrels, the barrels are good, but I think you can believe the 35 plus 30, at least 30 plus K percentage from Bauers at this point. And his BABIP is not terrible. So, you can believe the batting average and OBP right now, pretty much.
Yeah. It's just, this whole situation's frustrating. I think you may be in some situations where you have to cut Tyler Black in redraft right after spending money on him. Because you just can't wait on a guy that this is more of an indefinite. Okay, I don't know when he's coming back. He could be back in a couple of weeks. Right. He could be back in a couple of months, depending on.
But Jake Bauers has never put up a positive wins above replacement, and he isn't now.
No, and even though he's reinvented himself, he used to be a little more of that OBP, almost like slasher that would get to occasional power, and now it seems like he sells out to get to more power. The previous version of Jake Bauers was easier to justify.
Yeah, it's not any different. Yeah, I don't know, dude.
Annoying, very annoying situation, but not completely unforeseen. Let's talk about Willson Contreras for a moment. He suffered a fractured forearm on Tuesday. I got hit by the swing of JD Martinez. We're gonna dig into a little more about why that's happening and an overall trend on our Friday show, 1:00 Eastern on our YouTube page with Trevor May, if you want to watch that one live. But this really leaves the door open for Ivan Herrera now to get another long window of playing time. And if you've been looking for a second catcher recently, it's not great out there. It usually isn't on the waiver wire. So this might be a rare opportunity to get someone at least that brings a few interesting qualities to the table. We saw them on display earlier in the year when Herrera was playing a little bit more. I think Willson Contreras had a hamstring strain or something kind of minor that cost him a little time, but low K rate, okay swing decisions and pretty good power is what we've seen from Herrera in the limited sample.
Yeah, the raw power is good. He's been getting to that raw power more than he has in the past. And I think that's what describes his sort of sometimes 100 ISO in the minors and sometimes 180. Has been a fluctuating ground ball rate as he kind of tries to figure out how to make the most of his raw power. Right now in the majors, it's a 41% ground ball rate. He's getting to his power. It looks like one of the best versions of himself. I think he's definitely in deeper leagues your best situation. I'm looking right now at my 12-team one catcher just to see who is available and who I might pick up. I think I still like Keibert Ruiz, but if you're looking for a little more power, Shea Langeliers has a lot of nice things going on in terms of batted ball stats, power, and he just had himself a doubleheader for the ages. He just broke the record for RBI in a doubleheader for the Oakland A's. I think he had 8 yesterday. And so Shea Langeliers, I think, might be my pickup. The other pickup, if you're a little bit more batting average focused, I think Tyler Stevenson's going to hit for more batting average going forward. I obviously think that of Keibert Ruiz, but I think Tyler Stevenson has more power. So I guess for all around goodness, maybe Stevenson. If you're just trying to replace power, Shea Langeliers.
Yeah, Langeliers. I mean, if you just give him last year's BABIP based on like a reasonable adjustment here, just a little more luck on balls in play, adds about 60 points to his average in OBP. If you did that, he wouldn't be available anywhere. Because the power's been there, the playing time's there. So I do like Langeliers quite a bit.
Reminds me a little bit like a Cal Raleigh.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't strike out quite as much, so there could actually be a slightly better batting average in there if he figures it out. Yeah.
Yeah, contact quality, very, very good for Shea Langoliers. So I like those calls for your single leagues. I'd say Stevenson versus Langoliers is a tough toss-up. I might prefer Stevenson because you're getting a little more in the average department.
Better park. And he's one of the biggest barrel rate risers in the league. So it just didn't make my article because he didn't have the cutoff, the plate appearance cutoff.
Yeah, he kind of stands out on the season stat grid if you're using that page over at Fangraphs. Max Scherzer has actually been shut down from throwing for the next few days. He's trying to come back from a back injury. He's got a right thumb and forearm issue. So that's a bit of a concern. The main thing is that he's working back from the herniated disc in his back, which he had surgery for in mid-December.
He's 5 years younger than me, but he's feeling what I feel, which is, I figured out the Achilles problem for my running a little bit by wearing a compression sock when I run and walk around. It just traveled up. And so now my hammy's a little tight.
Uh-oh. You don't want to go much higher than that.
As you get older, it's just like, oh, okay, it's moving. It's now, lower back. His just left the lower back and went to his thumb somehow. But yeah, this is the toughest part of ranking pitchers that are injured, especially if they have long track records and you expect them to be okay when they get in, is you just don't know when they're going to get in. You think you have a timeline and then you don't. Remember, Alex Cobb was supposed to be ready because the hip surgery, they made advancements in hip surgery. He said this time they did the hip surgery, he got on the bike, right? And he got on the bike like 2 days later. Last time he had to sit for a month, So everyone's excited. So they ramp him up. Oh, we ramped him up too fast. He's got a flexor soreness. Not quite. They don't want to call it a strain. And so now the timetable is early June for Alex Cobb, which was kind of what it kind of was before we heard he was doing well. So I would just whenever you hear good news about a guy who's coming back, look at the age. Just go find the age number and be like, okay, he's feeling good now. He's feeling froggy now, but we'll see how he when they ramp up the thing, what happens to the rest of his body. So I still like him for when he comes back, but I don't know when that is. And I may start doing something on the rankings in the future, a little bit, maybe a hybrid of what Nick Pollock does, a pitcher list. He does not rank pitchers that are hurt at all. And what I may just do is pull pitchers who are currently hurt out of the regular rankings and maybe do a little bonus ranking.
Well, yeah, put them on the side because some leagues have IL spots. A lot of leagues have IL spots, but then within that group, you can't stash everybody. Usually, you have some.
Yeah, so maybe just have like a 3-tiered injured ranking of 20 to 30 pitchers of might be back soon. I don't know, some sort of tiering where I'm these guys are interesting. You got to keep track of these. Don't forget these guys because you don't want to forget the guys who are injured just because they're not ready now. We've done something. I've stashed Max Meyer in some leagues. It's not injury, but it's a similar situation. I've stashed Taj Bradley before. Now he's up. I jumped on the rundown, but
it's not a problem.
Taj Bradley is up with the Rays, and that's because Ryan Pepiot was hit by a comebacker.
Yeah, didn't look like it was very comfortable for Ryan Pepiot. Fortunately, the follow-up scans didn't reveal any sort of fractures, so he is playing catch again already. It might be a minimum stint on the IL. We haven't really talked about Pepiot in season yet, but so far so good. His first 7 starts with the Rays, 3.68 ERA, sub-1 WHIP, 11 walks in 36 2/3 innings. That was the big question skills-wise. For the brief time we saw him both at AAA last year and with the Dodgers, Ryan Pepiot's control was just miles ahead of where it had been really throughout the rest of his professional career. And it really seems like that skill has changed for the better. It seems like something he clearly owns. Now, the key difference is with the lower walk rate, the home runs have stayed up. The home runs were up at AAA last year. They're up with the Dodgers last year. They're up with the Rays so far this year. I think it's 16 home runs over those 3 stops going back to last season, and that's in a sample of 64, about 111 innings, give or take. So the home runs are there, but if they're solo shots, it's really not that big of a deal because he misses a lot of bats and he's not giving away free passes.
Was that Pepiot you're talking about, or did you transition to Bradley?
Yeah,
that's Pepiot. Yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about Pepiot. I think this has been, on the top end of what you could expect out of him, which does suggest maybe some regression going forward. But given their success with other guys with some command foibles, their one catcher target kind of approach, and some of the slight changes to his pitch mix, going a little bit away from the changeup, which I think he does not command well, and making him a little bit more of a fastball slider guy with changeups in the right situations. I think all those things have contributed to better command numbers. And I kind of expect more of the same from him when he's healthy again. I'm not really sure. Like a contusion, it could be a bone bruise. Like just because it says contusion doesn't mean he's totally out of the river and like out of the way and like he's gonna be fine. It's just gonna be 10 days and he's gonna be back. But I do I'm on that side of it where I think he'll be fine. Bradley, coming up, I'm excited. I always have been. He has the fourth best stuff plus in the AAA. He's one of the few people coming up with, okay command numbers and great stuff plus numbers. And he's had a taste of the major leagues and should be a little bit more ready for it this time. I will say that the per pitch numbers suggest that there hasn't been a huge change. The one big change is the split finger looks the best it's ever looked. So if he comes up and so he's thrown 73 four seams, 34 cutters, 32 split fingers, and 20 curveballs in my minor league sample. So he's using the cutter as a slider, as an out pitch. And I guess he's going to use it more against righties than lefties, but he hasn't had much success with that. The curveball and this cutter have below 90 stuff plus. And the cutter has below 100 location plus. So some of the flaws that were there before are still there. In terms of like, does he have a slider? Not really. Does he have good command of anything? Not really. Does he have an amazing four-seam fastball? Yes. Does he have a really good split finger? Yes. So there's some news here in that split finger. There's some of these same old problems. And I don't know why he can't throw a slider. I don't know why the team is fixated on this cutter. I think with a good split finger and a good curveball, he needs something to get righties out. And I don't think the cutter is that. So anyway, I don't know exactly what he'll do when he comes up. I know I'm excited and that I want to have him on my bench. Maybe. But then what if you waste one of his starts on the bench and then Pepiot's back and Bradley goes back down?
Yeah, I mean, because of the way they handled him last year, there's certainly the question of how sticky is his roster spot. I think if he pitches well, and I think our friend Jason Collette backstage at one point sort of confirmed this, Tyler Alexander is the first guy out of the rotation.
Right.
The question, I think, the bigger question with Bradley is what's going to happen when Shane Baz is also ready? Then is it a 6-man rotation? If everyone's healthy, does the lesser of the two go to the bullpen or back down to AAA? Because having options, that is certainly something the Rays will take advantage of if they need to. The related question, though, is the practical applications of Taj Bradley. His roster rate is around 50% on CBS. It's 58% in the RotoWire Online Championship.
A lot of IL stashing because he was on the IL.
Yeah. So even in the competitive 12-teamers at the NFBC, he's available in about 40% of leagues this weekend. And there's some guys that are rostered on the pitching side at much higher rates than I would expect that are ahead of him. So he's going to jump. Taj Bradley is going to be probably in the 90+% range. I mean, if Jose Budo is rostered in 90% of leagues,
yeah,
Edward Cabrera got up into the 90% range, that's where Taj is headed, if not even a little higher, because
but his next two starts, and they have him on Fangraphs lined up for 3 starts. You don't even know if he gets the 3 starts, but his next 2 starts are tomorrow against the Yankees. At least that's home.
Trop. Yep.
That's home. The 15th at Boston against Tanner Houck. Yikes. Then the 20th versus Boston at home against Tanner Houck again. And then if you're lucky that he just stayed in the rotation, because they do sprinkle some Ryan Pepiot in and actually start losing Tyler Alexander. That's funny. I like the schedule thing at Fangraphs. They actually take Tyler Alexander out of the rotation for you and replace him with Ryan Pepiot and keep Bradley in the rotation. So that's a quote unquote best case scenario, I guess. Then you finally on May 26th get the Royals at home. I mean, this is partially related to my piece about hitters that have seen the best stuff plus, right? Like if Bradley was a Royal, I think he would have a much different ERA at this point in his career.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of trying to break in with an AL East team.
Yeah.
Sure. But, okay, let's assume, even in a first-come, first-served league, you're going to say, I'm not using him against the Yankees, but I want him on my roster. That's on the extreme end of matchups that you would stay away from.
What if he dominates the Yankees at home, and then you're like, okay, I'm putting him in, and it's at Boston, and he's like, oh.
I think you have to have a sober view of the Red Sox. The Red Sox are fine. They're a good team. They're not a great team, but they're a good team. I'm talking
about Fenway more than the Red Sox.
I think Fenway is worse for a lefty than a righty on the pitching side. I think when you look at the splits so far this year, you see a Boston team that's league average against righties, strikes out 24.5% of the time. It's a perfect test of, okay, can we use Taj Bradley against a team that looks like it's an average, like average is good, a fine offensive lineup, but a somewhat tough park. If can you use him there or not? Like I think he's kind of on that borderline where you're thinking about it, but he's probably more in than out. If you can't use him against the Red Sox, there's a lot of other teams you can't use him against too.
Yeah, then it becomes like kind of more streamish or like 50%ish versus you want a guy in 12 teamers that you can start at least 75% of the time.
Yeah,
if he's on your roster.
I think that's kind of where Bradley's at for me. I think there's enough good to try it.
One footnote. It comes in a very small sample, but Stuff Plus is made for this, and there are results things that point to this as well. Shane Baz does not have his stuff back. Shane Baz's four-seam fastball Stuff Plus so far is 91. And even his slider and curveballs are at 107 and 109. And what we saw in his last start was no whiffs on the secondary pitches.
You're talking about the AAA rehab start.
Yes. And that's where my sample comes out of. So that could be one start, and maybe he's just trying to feel good and not get hurt. But I do have Shane Baz stuff in place. Like there was a couple stashed in a few places, and I've been waiting on him, and I'm getting nervous because it was such beautiful stuff. Maybe it just couldn't be.
It just wasn't meant to be. It was too good.
Like the time I asked Pete Fairbanks if maybe his stuff was too good for his body to contain.
And his response?
I hope not. Why would you ask me something like that?
Yeah, that probably made him uncomfortable.
I don't know. He's a weird guy.
I never thought about it that way. Yeah. I don't know why. I thought Pete Fairbanks was born in Australia. He was born in Milwaukee. Why did I think
that's
Pete
fairly
Fairbanks
different
was from Australia? Yeah.
Is that? Yeah. I think Grant Balfour was born in Australia.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I know other players were born there. I don't know why in my head. I don't know if the name sounds a little Australian or what exactly it is.
He just looks Australian.
Yeah. So I was hoping when you gave me the answer, it was going to be in an Australian accent. I was looking it up and I was like, no, he's born in Milwaukee.
Why did you think he was Australian?
I have no idea. Kind of blending the weekend waiver preview into the news a little bit. Robbie Grossman has been acquired by the Rangers. We talked about the Wyatt Langford injury and the window to try and get Wyatt Langford in long-term leagues, maybe being open just for a little while he's down. What are the expectations for Robbie Grossman? I remember a time not that long ago when people were a little bit excited about him because he had a 23 homer, 20 steal season for the Tigers. I mean, is he at least the kind of guy in a deeper league that could fill out your last outfield spot because he's part of a good lineup in the time that Langford's down?
The thing that Robbie Grossman has is a really short swing. It's not long. And so that's why you have these really nice swing strike rates. And he pairs it with really sort of extreme passivity. And so what he's doing is he's delaying the decision as long as possible. And then has a short, quick swing that does not produce power and will not. It will not produce power. So you are hoping for deep league OBP sort of production.
It's still probably skewing more in the direction of the mono leagues and like 20-team leagues, but not necessarily a lock to be added in 15. More schedule dependent in a 15 based on how they're going to use it.
Yeah, I mean, like a batter streamer, I guess, in those. And even then, I'd rather it was kind of an OBP situation. Although with that kind of a nice team there, then he should be able to get on base and maybe give you some runs and RBI, which is just kind of what you're looking for when you're streaming.
And maybe cheap bags, a few cheap bags at least. Still runs okay.
Langford looks
50th percentile sprint speed.
Really good in the bat tracking.
Okay, there you go. You're not supposed to gobstopper machine. Keep the blanket on the machine until Monday. Braxton Garrett back from the IL. Edward Cabrera quickly replaced him on the IL, unfortunately, with another arm problem. So that's a downer.
I'm so sad about that. And I think it does point back to a little bit of the Billy Beane comment about liking strike throws because they stay healthy. I mean, we have seen some really nice stuff, some really nice strikeout rates. This year, even a 3.75 Sierra from Cabrera. So, it should be producing better outcomes, but it's really, really minus command, and it's manifesting now in health issues as well.
Yeah, it's been a problem for him up and down in his career, and with Cabrera, 14.4% walk rate again this year. I've seen enough.
Bad call by me.
I'm just ready to.
I mean, for what it's worth, I told people to invest on the sort of like 1 year last pitchers. I don't think I needed to kowtow and genuflect, but
no, he was not the linchpin to the Eno 2024 successful season.
But I do have a fair amount of shares.
But Garrett's back, so I'm curious what you think about Garrett kind of working himself back into the Marlins rotation.
That is not a mistake there.
That's
if you're looking at it.
That's an 8.9. That's not an 8.9.
Yes.
So yes, the changeup stuff plus number is an 8.9. I don't remember ever seeing a single digit number on a pitch before.
Especially with like a good enough sample like that.
Yeah, 36 of them thrown. So what's going on with Braxton Garrett's changeup?
It doesn't like it. I think that his best pitch is that slider. The problem, and for a while it didn't register that high, and so this might not look that unfamiliar. But when we redid the model, his slider stuff plus went up, and this is low for that. So this is a guy who has low stuff plus, and it's even lower now. And then he's also a guy who used to have 5 location plus that were above average, and now he's down to 3. So I'm not racing. I'm not going to put like I wouldn't put like a 200 on him. Like I would 200 out of 1,000. I'm not going that far. I don't even think I'm going 100 on him, because the guys that have this package that are kind of lower stuff and high location, like I don't know if it's his theory. It might be just theory rather than like really proven in any way. But we do know that location plus isn't sticky year to year. My theory is that they need to be healthy. They need to feel good to get the most out of that package. And I don't think that he necessarily feels that good. And we know that his location plus is down. So I'd say 50 out of 1,000, 60 out of 1,000. I get it. You're looking for a starter. He might be more than the streamer, but he only might be more than the streamer.
He's home against the Mets next week, so I think that's a good first opportunity. The weekend start is home against the Phillies if you're in a league where you can make a move a little bit sooner than that. I'm not sure I'd want to use him for that first one back from the IL in light of what we're looking at here. Quickly, let's look at a few prospects that have been moving. Bryan Ramos got the call from the White Sox because injuries have piled up on them on their infield. I think it was a Danny Mendick IL stint that brought Ramos up. And after a slow start at Double-A, he was actually on a bit of a hitting streak at the time of his promotion. I think that goes back to April 25th. Yeah, 8 straight games he had a hit at Double-A. Got a little 4-game hitting streak going right now. Put up good numbers last year at Double-A, which is why I think the early struggles at that level were somewhat surprising. But I almost wonder if when you spend a half season at a level and you do well and you get sent back to the same level, if mentally that might have some kind of impact on you that it makes you press or it just makes
Lindor
you
talked about that a little bit. It's bored.
Yeah, it's like, hey, wait, what? Why am I here again? Why am I not at least at AAA playing at Charlotte?
Do you not have confidence in me? Am I not one of your top prospects?
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit bizarre. So yeah, 14 homers in 77 games at that level a season ago with a 369 OBP. I mean, I think the fact that they're giving him an opportunity just means that, hey, if he hits enough, they're not going to send him back down. They're the White Sox. Like they are a blank canvas at many positions right now.
Yeah, all of his like process stats don't look anything like they did in the minors, though. So it's hard for. I know it's only 16 plate appearances, but like he's not whiffing and he's not pulling the ball. It's very strange. All of it's very strange. I would look at what he did in the minors and be like, I don't know that I'm that excited about this guy.
I think it's deep leagues only for now, but if you got him in a keeper dynasty league, it's a hold just to see how this first run against big league pitching goes for Bryan Ramos. Rhett Lowder got a bump up to Double-A in the Reds organization. I think he's kind of interesting because as we get closer to the big leagues and we're always looking for quality pitchers, tough to find them. This is a guy that went 7th overall in the draft out of Wake Forest just a year ago. Looked really good at high A, debuting there. 28.4% K rate, 5.9% walk rate, lots of swinging strikes. I mean, overmatching the level, I think, is a fair way to put it. But Double-A kind of gives you a better sense of the timetable, if Lowder's going to continue to move quickly or if it might be a little more of a wait and see sort of summer for him. But I think there's a chance he continues to fly through that Red system. And there's enough of an opportunity there where if he continues to pitch well, I think we could see him before season's end.
It's true. And they're doing well enough where we don't know what role it's going to be.
Right. Could just be in whatever they need at the time. Yeah. But I think he could leapfrog a few other organizational guys and get there sooner than expected.
Yeah, speaking of organizational guys, I think he's off the 40 man at this point. I'm not sure. But Elliot Ramos.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the big leagues. I think.
He's back on the 40 if he's back in the big leagues.
Right, that's true. So maybe he never was off the 40, but he's got like one option left, and he's like, it's like near the end a little bit for him in terms of like chances, and he's going to have to make the best of his chances. I'm trying to find what the corresponding move was. I know somebody's hurt. Who is hurt?
So Elliot Ramos, while you're looking, it's so interesting. He's had great success at AAA since the start of last season. And he wasn't...
Oh, I know he's hurt.
He wasn't like terrible before that. It just wasn't exciting prior to that. It was kind of young.
And the max EVs have gone up and are plus. Like it looks like he's found his plus raw power, and then the ISOs are really good again. So I saw him at Modesto in 2019. And I thought, this is a star. I mean, he at the time, I mean, yes, slash lines, but he was hitting 306, 385 with 500 slugging in Modesto, which is kind of a pitcher's park. And he was hitting to both gaps for power, and he was running and everything looked good. I think the speed has kind of dissipated a little bit now. I mean, we're talking about he's 24 now, but the raw power, I think, has increased over time, as well as some of the swing and miss. So I do think we're talking about a guy who might strike out 30% of the time, and he's going to have to scare pitchers into a good OBP probably because his swing decisions aren't amazing. But he does have the raw power to scare people, and he's up because Jorge Soler is hurt.
That's right. Yeah, Soler went down. That could have been in the news section there. He's down with a hamstring injury, I think it was. Shoulder. That's worse.
That is worse. And it's a shoulder strain. And that could be any amount of time. It could really, I don't know the severity. And so I guess Ramos is going to get a little bit of burn here.
Yeah, at least for deeper leagues, maybe worth the kind of a backup bid, kind of a waterfall sort of player that you need to get someone on the roster. The playing time could come out a little heavy, and then you end up with someone that you got at a discount because you didn't wait for the week's worth of proof that you often want to wait for.
He's a right-hander, but so was Soler, so he just kind of fits in. And they don't have a ton of bats. Like Flores, I think it's on the down part of his career. I know that it has come suddenly and he was so useful last year, but he's dropped 5 miles an hour in max EV. So like this looks to me, I mean, I don't think he's hurt. Hasn't admitted to it. But it's like it doesn't look good for Flores. So I don't think that like they really want to play Flores a ton more, you know? So it's Wade at first, Estrada at second. They're kind of like become more conventional and just playing people. And Flores is a righty. So if Ramos hits a homer, like that buys him 5 more days probably, you know what I mean? So that's why I think he's interesting.
I think the giant call-up everyone's been looking at is Mason Black. He debuted recently, 92.7 on the fastball. So, it's not necessarily the velocity that we're looking for. Fastball, slider, occasional changeup, I think was the mix that we saw his first time out. What do you see in Mason Black? The control wasn't good the first time out either, but the results have been solid as he's made his way through that giant system.
Yeah, I was watching him. And there's things I like. It's an interesting slot for Mason Black where it's not quite all the way down. He gets a lot of horizontal movement, and it's not terrible vertical movement. It's kind of an interesting fastball for Black, and it's a really good slider. I did see some struggle against lefties. He was struggling. He kind of tried to use a lot of sliders against lefties. And I think eventually Bryce Harper got to him, right? And I think hit a 3-run homer off him. So I'm watching. I'm interested watching what he does against lefties, kind of sort of on the peripheral, a guy that I care about, especially since San Francisco is such a nice landing spot for a pitcher. I'd rather have Keaton win, so he's interesting.
The matchup, if he stays in the rotation next week, is home against the Rockies. So that's worth getting excited about, at least as a streaming opportunity, even if he's not someone you're going to keep on your roster for the long haul just yet. So that's where the interest is. But Blake Snell seems to be making more progress than expected coming off of the grade 2 adductor strain. So the window might be a little shorter for Mason Black than we would have thought when we first heard about the Blake Snell injury. One other item to pass along, Parker Meadows finally optioned to AAA recently. What's the long-term outlook for you? Are you trying to go after Parker Meadows where he's available? He's not really a stash outside of like AL-only leagues as far as your redraft interest goes, but this went really, really wrong in a limited sample. About as well as things went for him at AAA last year, it's about as poorly as they went to begin this season with his return to Detroit.
What he came up with? He came up on the Dylan Head search, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
That Parker Meadows had some really bad seasons in the minor leagues.
Yes, he does. I mean, like the 2019 season at A-ball, an 80 WRC plus, first exposure to high A in 2021, 94 games, 73 WRC plus.
Yeah.
It just makes you wonder when you see someone get to a level, struggle, take a long time, adjust to get better, how much longer does it take to figure out the big leagues? We've seen plenty of guys go on to have long-term success that do that. They get promoted, they strike out more, they slump, they figure it out, they get better. But if it takes a half season to do it at different minor league levels, it would take a lot longer against top-level pitching.
Yes. And then you add in the age factor. He's never really been that young for those levels.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disappointed. I thought this would work out better. The barrel rate's okay. The max EV is passable. The swing strike rate's too high. And then there's got to be some portion of this is luck. I mean, a 128 BABIP, you can only earn so much of that. I would say a 75% fly ball rate is too aggressive. You know what I think he should do? I think he should try to do the Anthony Volpe and flatten out a little bit more. And not necessarily have a swing that's trying to make the most of his power. I know the power is what gets you paid and what gets you playing time, but it's obviously not going to work. Even his projections right now are for like a 215 batting average and a 300 OBP. And those are even some of the better projections. So he needs to do something that allows him to make more contact.
Yeah, he's flashed it at times, but it might be a swing change in order. And he's been age appropriate for levels. He hasn't been, he's been a little young for some of his stops too. When he repeats, he's more age appropriate. When he gets there, he's a tick on the young side. So I'm still interested from like a keeper dynasty perspective as a bottom of the roster sort of stash. But geez, like Otonu, for example, I had him on that team. He's a cut that I try to get back cheaply because I don't want him for $3. I want him for $1. Yeah, I want the absolute bare minimum price for a player at the bottom of my roster. As far as other waiver targets you're thinking about this weekend, I saw a few interesting names looking for hitters that are playing a lot more. Johnny DeLuca, who I think got a mention last week because the Rays are the Rays. They're always messing around playing time. He still kind of jumps out, and he's been playing more center field too, which I think leaves the door open for a longer run of regular duty. And he's got some different tools too. A lot of ways he could be useful on that team. I think the initial expectation was that he'd fill the Manuel Margot role, but 3 of his 6 starts since coming off the IL have been in center field so far.
You know, one thing that caught my eye about DeLuca is he played center field.
Yeah, that's what half the time he's starting in center.
And that changed my opinion of him a little bit because I was like, well, I like Richie Palacios. I don't think Randy Rosarena is losing his job, but I've always thought that Siri is so defense forward in his package that what he offers as a player that he always has the risk of becoming a 4th outfielder, defensive replacement, somebody that only plays against lefties. It's an awkward platoon because DeLuca is also a righty, but if you just trust his bat more and you just want to put Siri only in situations where he can succeed better, then Johnny DeLuca could take center field.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at with Sirius. I'm just wondering, like, hey, is he actually sliding into the background here? I mean,
yeah,
he's a strange player because especially if he's not getting to the power, it's just all defense. That's it. That's all you're getting. And he has not been getting to that power as consistently this year as he did a year ago.
Base running, but
yeah,
I mean, there's more base running in the league these days, and a 42% strikeout rate is pretty bad. And it honestly could be presaged by he last year had a 20% swing strike rate. Now he has 19. I mean, that's got to be, let me just look, that's got to be one of the worst swing strike rates in the league.
And Siri's out of options too. So they're going to make that decision as kind of a bigger picture one. DeLuca does have options, but he's playing so much. I don't think they're sending him down anytime soon.
Among Ezekiel Tovar has the worst at 21%, but that's qualified. So if I make it 50 plate appearances, Arias is up there, Sirius 7th.
Yeah.
Gabriel Arias, Ezekiel Tovar, Paul DeJong, Jan Gomes, Estevan Florial, Chris Bryant, Jose Siri, Byron Buxton, JD Davis, Nick Castellanos. This is not generally where I like to shop.
No, it's a group of players I mostly don't have rostered.
Yeah.
So strange company there for Jose Siri. But yeah, Johnny DeLuca, probably going to be somewhat popular this weekend too if that playing time runs all the way through Sunday. If he started 9 consecutive games or something running into Fab, he's going to draw some 5% bids, but probably justified given the combination of tools. We talked about Joey Loperfido a lot last week. John Singleton is emerging to be a little bit of a problem in the Loperfido regular run of playing time window. And Singleton's actually doing a little bit more this time around in the big leagues than he did a year ago. He's kept the K rate down. He's drawing his walks, got a nice quality contact as far as a 40% hard hit rate again. This could actually work in deep leagues on the corner. It's probably a big side platoon situation. So that's not over the top exciting, but it's causing problems for other players on the roster we'd like at the very least.
Yeah. I actually, I like Singleton. I mean, a 114 max TV is like, there could be more barrels in there.
And they let him play last night against Carlos Rodon. They actually let him start against the lefty. So we're now at 8 consecutive starts for Singleton at first base. Loperfido's playing more in the outfield because of the McCormick injury.
If you take the BABIP out of this, you're talking what, a 21% strike rate with an 8.5% swing strike rate, 8% barrel rate, 114 max EV. Like, you'd expect better than a 239 average. You didn't even expect better than 3 homers, I think.
Yeah.
I guess it's the barrel rate. The barrel rate is unimpressive.
Would you rather actually roster and play Singleton or Andrew Vaughn at this moment?
Oh, Lord. Oh, good Lord.
It's not a good situation if that's your first base option.
Yeah, I have been wondering if Vaughn is somebody I want to pick up. I think Singleton. I mean, Vaughn is not pulling the ball. He has an even smaller barrel rate. His max EV is worse. His strikeout rate is worse. His swing strike rate is worse. All the process stats that I look at are worse. Has not hit a homer yet.
It's just strange that this version has showed up because he seemed like he was gradually nudging in the right direction, or at the very least had found 20 homer power and was just going to be an everyday guy that showed up, hit for an okay average, drove in runs on a bad team, and we could live with that. And it just hasn't been that guy to this point. One more name to throw at you on the hitting side. Brett Harris getting an opportunity for the A's. He's popped 3 homers in 7 games. Low strikeout rates pretty much everywhere he's been. He's been a little old for the level along the way. Some speed mixed in as well. Is there anything here with Harris getting an opportunity in Oakland?
We'll see. One thing I've noticed about Oakland hitters is not a lot of pull, a lot of patience, letting it travel, high walk rates. And that doesn't usually translate to the kind of power he's showing in this small sample. And if you look up and down at his ISOs, they are unimpressive. So the weird thing is for him to come up and not have a good batting average and hit homers when the past has shown that he could probably have an okay batting average and okay OBP, but not hit homers. So I think this is one where the small sample is pushing in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's strange, but yet another player popping up in Oakland with more playing time than expected and cashing it in some ways so far.
We didn't get to my prospect of the week.
Well, yeah, we're running out of time, but
yeah, we were
prospect of the week makes its triumphant return at the very end of this episode. So we'll put it in here
really quickly. David Festa has always had good stuff plus, but recently you can see on YouTube, Location Plus is better. And as I don't believe necessarily in Simeon Woods Richardson, I think Louis Varland has taken a big step back. David Festa could be the next guy that comes up. Obviously, Kate Horton, Jackson Jobe and Paul Skenes are the class of the minor league prospects, and they still all are above David Festa in terms of Stuff Plus. But if you're looking for who's behind that group, David Festa might be the name.
Yeah, pretty interesting group of names there. Cade Horton with a 90.1 location plus. So that might be the
77 pitches, though. That usually takes a little bit longer. He doesn't have bad command grades. That's one where I would wait for more information. David Festa has bad command grades, but he has 448 pitches. So that location plus becomes more interesting.
Yeah. I think Simeon Woods Richardson is another great Lowdom pull. Like, what's going to really happen with him with more time in the big leagues? It doesn't seem like the results should be this good, but I don't know. He's done it for stretches. Really, really young for the level throughout his time in a few different organizations. Been traded a couple of times.
It's basically a dead zone fastball in terms of movement. 92.9 is a mile an hour shorter than most fastballs. I don't necessarily see a standout. The slider being 87 miles an hour is interesting. So he's got a good slider, but he throws the fastball at a conventional rate. And so far, he's got a 276 slugging on it. I just don't believe that. I don't know if I believe that. The X slugging on it is 608.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem eventually. My prospect of the week selection after a lot of back and forth is Moises Ballesteros in the Cubs organization. He's at AA right now. 188 WRC plus entering play on Wednesday. Really good plate skills, of course, when you're putting up numbers like that. It's only been 22 games. He's getting to some power, just 3 homers. He's listed at 5'7", a little bit of an undersized player. Might not even be a catcher long term, but it might not matter because he's going to play all season as a 20-year-old at AA. So I'm really curious to see where this goes. Maybe a guy that just hits his way into a different position if he doesn't stick behind the plate in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a opportunity maybe at first base. Matt Mervis is getting another shot, and it's not looking great right now. And he's been optioned. I missed that, but he's been optioned. So it's not like DH and first base are on lockdown, although you may still get Morel headed there. And Patrick Wisdom's backup, but Bush is not great defensively either. So, it's not like they have an amazing defensive team and can just plug him in. But
no, we're seeing after that streak, that homer streak earlier in the year. I know he had the walk off this week. Michael Bush went real quiet prior to that walk off. He's got a 34.5% K rate for the season. So some of the early things that have gone right have been kind of overshadowed by
he's a real age and level guy. I mean, if you want to get excited about his minor league numbers, you need to look at the age. He's 26 right now. He was older than the level a lot.
Yeah, we need to see that K rate come down and come down quickly if Bush is going to make himself a part of the Cubs' long-term plans. Nice start, though, from a power perspective with the 7 homers through his first 36 games. But be cautious about expecting that to continue, given the more recent swing and miss trends we're seeing from him. We are going to go on our way out the door. A reminder, you can get a subscription to The Athletic at theathletic.com/rates and barrels. You can find Eno on Twitter at Eno Saris. Find me at Derek Van Riper. Find the pod at Rates and Barrels. We've got our live stream coming up on Friday with Trevor May at 1 o'clock Eastern on our YouTube page. So we hope to see you for that. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Friday.
Thanks for listening.